And welcome to 𝒃𝒄𝒕𝒔𝒖𝒓𝒗𝒊𝒗𝒐𝒓. I have my tracking poles and a tarp, and I'll show you the easiest way to set up your tarp on the ground without trees using the tracking poles. There are a couple of tricks and tips you can use to make things a little easier for yourself. So my tarp is the Super Light by 𝑑𝑰𝑻𝑪𝑯. It's not the best, but it's not the worst either, and mine's in a snake skin. I actually use mine also for hammocking, but I still keep the snake skin even for ground dwelling. The lines for me, head and foot, are on jungle knots. That is on the channel if you want to know how to make jungle knots. Now I'll be setting the tracking poles at the desired height rather than give you a number in height. Usually it's a seating height, so I'll extend the tracking pole just above my head seated. First of all, pre-attach all your guide lines, that is your perimeter, head and foot. I'm going to remove my tarp from the stuff sack, which is just a snake skin. You find your perimeter and you need to peg out the head and the foot on the same side. You want the wind blowing into your face, and then that way you can set up in any weather conditions. So this is what I'm doing now, just finding that head and foot. For a ground dwelling system, get your first two ground anchors. Just pin it quite loose because we're going to move things about and tighten it as we go. So there's the first one in, move to the other end. Pull this quite tight and stake it in. Next will come the ridge line. Now this is at a head and foot. Now I'm not going to pull it out in parallel to the ridge. Instead it's coming back at a 45-degree angle, and then I'll move it into line afterwards. This is for a quick and easy setup. So it's at this point I can adjust my tracking pole and just add it to the tarp at whatever desired length. I think I'll have mine somewhere just above head height. Your head height will be different. I'm not pulling back on the lines in the horizontal plane to the actual ridge line. I'm coming off at a 45-degree. Do the same at the other end. I just need to adjust the height of the tracking pole. With access to another two tent pins, I'll pull out the right hand side, head and foot, stake it out. If I was to try and do this any other way, for instance starting at the head end and pinning out left and right and balancing the pole is always falling over. This is why the ridge is over on the 45. So now brought it from 45 over to 90 degrees parallel with the ridge. Pin it out properly, make sure it's nice and tight. So now the head end and foot end are in parallel with the ridge line. When I set it out, this cord here was over to a 45-degree angle. That's what prevents the pole here from falling over as you're setting up, which is very common. So I can make some small modifications, get that a little straighter, but we're up and we're ready to get in. This method can be done very quickly once you practice it just once or twice. The methods I've seen people do is they start at the head end and peg out left and right, put the pole up and then pull the guy line in parallel with the ridge, and it never works. The pole keeps falling over. They have to prop it up again, run over to the other end and try do the same. With this I start with just one side, head, foot, bring the cord out, not in parallel to the ridge but to a 45 like that, and it It's just enough to keep this pole rigid while you set up. Last thing, I disconnect from the 45, bring it back into parallel to the ridge, just like any other tarp. All I have to do if I want is to go around the perimeter and then just tighten everything up in the same way you would any other setup. If I didn't use the sil nylon and used the polyester, a thicker material, the process would be the same for the ground camp. So I don't want the wind blowing in the doors, which is why I said have the wind coming into your face while you set it up. That way you know you're protected. I've actually changed the direction of my tarp. So this would have originally been the ridge line, but now I can use it as a tie off in those very strong winds. Use whatever tie out system you want for your head and foot end. If you want to make loops, make loops. If you want to use jungle knots, you can. Use any tightening system or gadget you want. It doesn't have to be jungle knots. It's the method of just bringing the cord out to 45 and then staking it head and foot just on the one side, which is the secret to setting up a good quick tarp. Until next time, take care of yourself. I'll see you out there. Happy trails.